let's get started. So, what is this thing that Scott has built? So, I'm actually a happy user of Servoy Cloud, and if you already have Servoy Cloud, you don't need this. That's the first conclusion. However, if you can't run on Servoy Cloud, you don't want to run on Servoy Cloud, you want to run on your own cloud, you want to deploy to your own server, then this is the solution. So that's a simple description of this product. So essentially, it is a complete CI and CD product to build your Servoy application, and then once the build is done, then you can decide, do we want to continue with some automation? So it can automatically deploy to, for example, Azure, or to another cloud, to your own cloud. Or do you just want to take the WAR or the container or the Docker image and then deploy it by yourself? So that's what you can do with this. And today it is based on GitHub, so your code has to be on GitHub. If your code is not on GitHub, then this will not work. Maybe Scott is going to make it work with other repositories. You can ask him. I don't know. Also, if you have any specific questions, I will not be able to answer them. So if you have questions, then please post them in the Discord channel, and I will make sure that Scott gets online on the Discord channel today to answer any of those questions that you may have. All right, so I'm going to start with a brief overview, and then we will actually build from scratch an Azure application. Scott kind of sent me a video on how to do that, but I decided instead of trying it myself, his video is pretty good, so I can never do it better than his video. So I'm just going to play his video. But I will go through his slides. And yeah, he wanted to be here, but he was so busy with work. And Scott is a bit of a Dutch, I think he has some Dutch genes in him, because he's also very cheap. And like many Dutch people, including myself. So he's like, no, if I go to ServoyCamp, I lose 3 days of work, and I need to buy a ticket, and then buy a hotel, maybe I'll have to be a sponsor, I don't want to be a sponsor. But that's fine, because he makes great products. He's probably going to watch this video, so I have to be kind, isn't it? Yeah. Sorry, Scott, you're a great guy. So let's go through the current workflow, and you all know this, the current workflow of making a build. You go to this fantastic dialog, which has a bunch of options, and you pick your options, and it is a manual process, as we all know. You have to go there every time you want to do a build. It's quite slow if you have a bigger application. So typically, if you want to start this, you go out for a coffee or a cigarette back in the days. Does anybody still smoke here?
Last night, some did.
Yeah? Well, I remember back in the days when everybody used to smoke at conferences.
Yeah.
I smoked a lot at all the FileMaker conferences. And yeah, so it's not always consistent, and it really depends on the local computer that you're running this on. I mean, generally it produces okay builds, but it's not always consistent depending on your computer. So then Scott came up with a way, essentially, to do two kinds of builds. A simple one, so you're in Servoy Developer, you do a commit and a push, goes to your private or public GitHub repository, and then using GitHub Actions, it does all that process. So it builds the application, and I have to put my glasses on because I can't read this. It builds a Servoy WAR file, which you could then save to S3 or as a GitHub release, and then maybe upload it using SFTP. And it can build a Tomcat Docker image with the Servoy WAR already inside of that image, so all you have to do is just fire it up. And then if you go into the advanced, then you can also automate this whole section with it. So you can automate it all the way into deploying it to your own in-house server and going live with no human interaction, which I think is pretty neat, because now you can make this your deployment a very predictable process just by putting in, essentially using specific tags in your commit, and then the commit knows, okay, you want to push it to dev, you want to push it to production, and then it will follow that whole process for you. Any questions so far, or is this pretty clear? All right. Yeah, so that's what it does, and we're going to look at now the detailed steps. What you need to keep in mind when you see this video is you'll be like, wow, I have to do a lot of stuff. But the good news is that's only one time, because once you've done it, so what Scott will do in the videos, he will go through all the steps that you need to do one time, and then he'll do a second deployment, so you get an idea on how much work it is to do the second deployment. The other benefit of this recorded video is we don't have to wait for the build to complete, because there will be a cut when he's waiting for the build to complete. It's a bit quicker to follow. All right. This is my easiest presentation of the week. I just hit play. Then Hario's going to do the sound, I think.
Today, we're going to demo Servoy DevOps with Azure. All right, I'm going to do this one a little bit different. I'm going to kind of start more from scratch so you can see all the steps. You might see some mistakes, but that's okay too. So we're going to walk through how to get this thing deployed. So let's start with what I've got here. So I have a cloud sample solution checked out. It is connected to our GitHub repository out here, Servoy WorldBuilder examples. And I have a branch Azure container registry. So that's the one we're going to be working on today. If you want to follow along, all the source code for this will be out there. So first thing we want to do is maybe set up a database server out in Azure. Right now I've got some connections to some other databases out in DigitalOcean, but I'm going to connect myself up to one in Azure. So let's come out here and this is my Azure account I've created. We're going to make a new database. And so we'll hit create. So it gives you a few options here. We're going to stick with flexible.
Oh, I need to get some sound. Otherwise there will be no sound on the recording. By the way, if you're a software company, most of you are, some of you are not, then this way? Yeah. I look funny now. If you're a software company, Microsoft has a fantastic program, I'll put the link in Discord, that gives you free GitHub Enterprise for a year and gives you $5,000 in credits in Azure that you can use for free. You pay nothing for that. Then once you use the credits, you can decide to go somewhere else. Maybe Google, I'm sure Google has a program as well. If you want to load up on some free cloud hours, sign up for the program, it's free.
So we'll hit create. We're going to choose your subscription and resource group. So it doesn't look like I have one, so I'll create a new one. And we'll call it Demo 1. And then we get to give it a server name, so it needs to be unique. So PG1, we'll call it Demo PG1. There we go. That'll be Eastern US, Postgres 15. Gives you some suggested workload types, and it'll automatically pick the size. You can always click configure if you want to do something different. So let's do development, and that's going to pull it down to $16 a month, and it's going to be a much simpler setup here. So availability zone, no preference. We're not going to enable high availability for now, but that's an option for you. And we'll stick with Postgres authentication. So let's use a suggested password. So just paste that in, and So I'm going to need to keep track of these things. So I'm going to do a new one and kind of put that there, and a username is Servoy. So we'll keep those sitting there. Good. Networking. I'm going to give it a public IP. That does not mean it's open to the world. It still has a firewall in front of it. And we're going to add our current, my IP address where I am now to the firewall rule. So that'll allow me to connect to the Postgres database. Later, we'll add another firewall rule to let our app server connect. So security, we'll stick with that. Tag options, good there. And burstable, there we go. And let's create. Okay, while that's working, I'm going to get the database connections open here in my Servoy developer and ready to go. If you look at my repository connection, I'm actually using in-memory. That's what I would suggest for everyone. But if you do want to use a real database connection, you can. Let's go back and check on how we're doing here. It's in progress. Okay, well, that took a while, but a couple of minutes there. So let's go take a look at it. So we've got a server name. We know our username and password. So let's see if we can get connected to this thing. All right, so let's go look at connection settings. So we can see our host name there, username, port number, password. Let's go to databases and let's actually create those databases. So it looks like we have one called example. And then let's add another one, and that's called SVY security. Okay, let's let those get created. And let's plug and copy that host name. Paste it in there. Paste that in there. I know the username is Servoy, so we'll drop that in there. And then we'll copy our password. And let's test it. Good. So we will save both of those. All right, so we've done that, but now as you can tell, we're missing a bunch of tables and got a lot of additional errors. So let's synchronize DB server info. And we're going to tell it to create all and finish. And let's do the same for Servoy security. And let's give it a clean to clean up those errors. Okay, so you can see it's connected to the database servers. They're hosted in Azure, and it's created the basic structure for me. You can use other tools. I think it actually has some examples here. So you could use, let's bring this down. So you could use like pgadmin, DB Beaver, whatever you want, and connect to that, set up some sample data, whatever. So you can always directly connect to your database running in the cloud. Just keep in mind you do need to manage the firewall. So right now my IP is the only thing allowed through. Okay, next step. So why did I do all that? Well, I did that because that's the easiest way to do step one of DevOps, which is getting a property file into your repository so that it knows what to use for the build and what to use for the war file. So we're going to close this and let's go take a look at that property file. Actually, let's just copy it first. So we're going to go into our World Builder examples here. So this is just my local workspace, and I made a folder earlier called prop files, and I'm going to paste Servoy property file from my developer into this, and then let's open this guy up and take a look at it. So that looks good. It's got my connections, it's got my encrypted password, it's got the inbound repository. The only thing I don't like is the file service default folder, so I'm going to clear that out, and Servoy will pick one automatically. So let's get rid of that. All right, and we'll save it. Okay, let's close that, and we'll close that. So step 2 is, since the build is happening in the cloud, not only does it need the property file, but it also needs like any extras that you have. By extras, I mean like plugins, beans, things like that. So what we do is we overlay the application server folder with whatever you include in a folder that you designate. So let's go back to our workspace here, and we're going to make a new folder. And we like to call our Servoy developer extras. And then the first thing you need to have inside of there is a new folder called application server. And then at that point, it just mimics your installation. So whatever stuff you have that's different from the default install, you'll mirror it over here. So here's the application server folder. Here's my developer folder. I know I have some plugins that I want to add. So we're going to make a new folder for plugins. And let's go into the plugins folder and let's pick the ones that I know I need to add. So Jasper Reports is one that we added. So let's get those. And that might be the only one in this project. Let me just give it another scan. That looks about right. So we're going to copy those and paste it into there. So those are now going to get included in the war file when it does its build. Okay, next step, step 3, we're going to set up the YAML file for the Docker action. So we're going to come back here and we're going to make a new folder called .github. And another folder called workflows. And then we're going to make a new text document. And we'll call it Azure Container Registry. I don't remember the name of that. Azure Container Registry .yaml. All right. So then we're going to open this guy up, and we're going to start with some examples we have out there. So if I come to our Servoy War Builder examples, I've got one that we did for DigitalOcean. So we're going to try and kind of stick with that as a starting point, and then we'll make some adjustments. So it's called Servoy build. Um, we're actually doing a build and deploy here. So I'll do build and deploy. So that's what's going to show up when the action runs. And then you can set up like what branches should this run on. I'm happen to be working in a branch called Azure Container Registry. So we want that one to be it. And then I have some options like when do you want this thing to run? So I don't want it to run on like every commit. I like to have a little bit more control there. So you can see we kind of do this bracket thing. War is kind of the common one that we use, but I'll call this like Azure deploy there. So the first step is pretty much always the same. You're going to check it out. Then you're going to run our builder. So you're going to specify the name to our GitHub action and the Servoy version that you want. And all of these settings are available out here. So if you go to the Servoy War Builder GitHub repo, you can see some samples. And then if you scroll all the way down, you sort of start to see what all those property names are and what they do. So if you're familiar with exporting, manually, these are basically like equivalent flags that you get. So let's keep running through these. You'll notice the use of secrets. So secrets are set up in your settings, secrets and variables, actions, and here you have a list of repository secrets. So you hit new repository secret, give it a name, give it a value, and then it's stored encrypted up in GitHub, and you can never see the current value. You can only overwrite it. But those variables are available at build time here. So these will get merged in with whatever the secret value was. Properties file. So for now, I'm actually just going to make mine both the same. So I'm going to point it to the same file. There we go. And again, that's that one that we made over here. So, wrong folder. That's going to be this guy. So, prop files, we copied in that Servoy property file and made a few tweaks to it. And so we're just referencing that here. We're going to build it off of DBIs, so it's not going to actually try to connect to the database. It's just going to use the DBI files to know what's in the database. Otherwise, you would have to let it connect to your, open the firewall port. We don't do that. We're going to call it cloud.war, allow SQL changes, allow data model changes, and then here's our extras folder. So that's Servoy developer extras. Let's come back here. So that's that guy. So we're just telling it here's the spot to overlay stuff into for all the custom things we add, plugins, beans, whatever. Okay, next up, so Docker login. So we've got to have a way to let Docker log in to our private container registry. Well, that means the first thing we have to do is actually create a container registry. So let's save our progress here. Let's go do that. So let's come out to Azure. Let's go back to home. And container registries. If you don't see that, by the way, you can search up top and find it. And let's create a container registry. We're going to put it in the same resource group. Servoy demo 1. Going to be in the east. Hit next. And we'll keep taking the defaults here. And let's create. So let's go take a look at it. Or tokens. All right. So a token along with a password lets you authenticate to the registry. So the registry is public in that it has a public IP, but you still have to authenticate to the registry in order to push or pull. So let's add a new one. And we'll call this GitHub Actions. And we're going to let this do a push. So it doesn't look like it's generated it yet, so let's make it generate one, I guess. There we go. So you can set an expiration date. I'm just going to go ahead and generate one for now. Yes. Okay, there we go. So let's copy these. And so it says you do a Docker login. That's the username. That's the password. And then that's the registry. Good. So that's what we need. So let's go back to our YAML file. So here's our Docker login. So we know what our registry is. And we're going to need to create secrets for these. I think the username is acceptable to drop in there, but I don't want the password being public. So let's copy that guy. And let's go back to our example here. I think we had secrets. There we go. The repository secret. And we'll call that Azure registry password. I'm just going to copy that for good measure. There we go. You can see that's been added. So now we come back to our YAML file. I'm going to do secrets dot Azure container registry password. All right. So then that's going to get it logged into the Azure container registry, and then we're going to do a push to it. So we're going to use our GitHub action for Tomcat Builder. What that does is it builds a Tomcat Docker image, puts your war inside of it, and then it's going to do a push to this registry. So what I think we're going to do is stick with kind of the standard way. So we put the registry name in there. And we're going to call it Servoy Tomcat. So we'll try and put it at the root directory because this one already has our demo right there. So let's save that and see what happens here. So I got to remember my tag name is Azure Deploy. All right, so let's go back to Servoy. Let's open it up here. Okay, so let's see if we have any outgoing changes. All right, so those files you saw us work with over in the workspace there. So there's our YAML file for the workflow, the extras that we added. What else do we have here? Property files. All right, so we'll do all those. And we'll call it first build test. And we're going to put that flag in there. So it should see our YAML file in the commit, which should look at this message here because it has the bracket Azure Deploy. And that, in theory, if we go take a look at our file here, that should trigger this to run. So let's do a commit, and there we go. Now it went through. So let's go take a look at the actions. Whoop, it's going to try to run, so good. Let's take a look, watch it build. Let's move on to the Servoy part. running our Servoy builder GitHub action. So this is where it's actually trying to build the war file for you. You kind of see some of the steps that it's going through. Okay, so it says it did the build. Then it did the Docker login. And now it's attempting to push that new image. So it's the Tomcat image with our war file inside of it. And it's going to try and push that to our container registry in Azure. Let's see, we've kind of got a clock going up here, so it's about 3.5 minutes so far. So that was pretty good. Finished Docker login, so it's a successful build. So let's see about that. So, okay. So let's click on repositories. And there's the Servoy Tomcat. And you can see, so it defaulted to a date and time tag. I actually don't like that. I'm not crazy about that. So, but we'll change that later. So on the next build, we'll give it a better tag. So let's see if we can deploy this guy now. So we've got a database server in Azure. We have a Tomcat image now with our war file inside of it. So let's see if we can make a container service to deploy it. So we'll type container app. Looks good. And let's make a new one. Same description, demo 1, container app name. We'll call this Tomcat Servoy. Region, we're going to want to put this in East. And next for the container, we're not going to use the quick start image. We're going to try to use ours. So Azure Container Registry, there's our registry we created. So we get an error. Let's see, because admin credentials are disabled. So well, let's go back and take a look at that. So container registry. So access keys, we're going to try this. We'll turn that on. Okay, let's go back and give that another try. So make a container app, create a new one, resource group demo, call it Tomcat Servoy, look for East US, and a container. Don't use the quick start image. Let's pick our registry, and there we go. So Tomcat, and there's our tag choice. So again, we're going to make these a little bit better next time. We're going to do version tags. We have opportunities to overwrite the commands. We can pick CPU and memory, so give a little bit more there. And then you've got environmental variables. So if you take a look at the documentation, so this is the war builder. But if you look at the Tomcat war builder, the Tomcat builder, you'll see it'll have some stuff in the documentation here with things you can override. So that would have been earlier actually in the builder step that I could have overrode these things. But you do have sort of the standard things you can override, like Catalina ops and stuff for memory. And we'll update the documentation here to give you more examples. We're just going to keep it simple for now and take the defaults. So let's hit review and create. And it's thinking about it. And create. All right, deployment progress. Now I expect the war file. So Tomcat will launch, but our war file will most likely fail because it won't be able to connect to the database. So that's the firewall port part that we'll need to open up once this gets deployed. Okay, it says it finished, so let's take a look, see what we got here. So we're going to take a look at the ingress here, and we're going to enable HTTP traffic. And I believe we default to run on 8080. So let's try that. And we actually want traffic from anywhere, not just inside the VNet. Let's go back to overview here. Let's see what that updated to. There we go. So there's a application URL. Let's see what it does. Gonna try the non-HTTP port. Oh, there we go. They both loaded. So just redirected over. Okay, so Tomcat's running. But I'm fairly certain our cloud file is not. So yeah, we're gonna get a 404 on that. So let's see what changes we need to make to let the container app connect to our database server. We've got an option down here, service connectors. So let's give that a shot. So we've got our container, and then it's going to let us pick what else we're connecting to. So we've got a flexible server for Postgres that we created earlier, and it's automatically picked everything else. Let's see. I was wondering if it would let me put in an asterisk, but we'll go ahead and set these up. Oh, if you were in production, you might choose something slightly different, but for the moment, I'm just going to drop in our credentials that you had before. So we're giving me a funny error there, so I'll refresh the page and give it another try. So service type, flexible server, Postgres, Azure. Yep. An example, gonna be a Java client, connection string. Use the password and credentials that we have previously saved. Let's see if it'll work this time. Okay, so it says it made one. And those look like pretty much the same. SSL mode require is an NRs, but that looks like the same credentials. Now I'm expecting that probably opened up a firewall port for all of the databases. So right now I'm not going to try and make another one. We're just going to see if we can get that to work. Let's go back, and I've refreshed here and it looks like it's back up and running. So, all right. So set up our first user here. There we go. So you can see our solutions are there. Let's see if they're actually running. So we'll copy that. And there we go. So let's make some changes and see what the deployment looks like. But let's also just poke around in the container here and see what's going on first. So I'm going to scroll down to console. And this is going to let me SSH basically into the container. And I know from the documentation of the Tomcat image that the default Servoy user hole is /user/Servoy. And there's a Servoy file, server, and there's our Servoy log file. So let's take a look at it. See some referencing that it's unhappy about not being able to set the default location for the log file. So let's go ahead. I'm sorry, for the file plugin. Let's go ahead and copy this. And we'll probably put it at /uploads maybe. All right. So let's go back. We'll close the solution. We'll just leave it there for now. But we will go back to developer. We'll make a small change. We'll change username to user just so we can see that our changes will get deployed. And then let's take a look at that YAML file here. Let's see, that's actually not the one I want. I want to go to property file first. And I want to change the folder location, that value that I copied. And we'll save that. So our YAML file, I don't think there's much we need to change about that. I think we're okay with that. We're going to do the tag a little bit different. It's not officially a tag, but the things inside the little brackets when we do the commit, we're going to change those a little bit. So let's come back here and do a commit. All right, so I just restarted it and it sees that property change, so that's good. Let's just go ahead and stage all those. And I need my Azure deploy. And I'm also going to specify a name by tagging. So let's go take a look. So let's go take a look at the actions I ran in the past. And I see an example there that I've used. And that'll be in the documentation as well. So let's drop that tag name in. So this is going to be the Docker tag. So I'll call it v1.1, since we'll consider that other one sort of version 1. Since I didn't do that in the other commit, it just used the current date and time. So put those in there, and we'll give it a description, update login form, and property file. Right, so that's going to trigger the deploy, and then it'll use that version number for the tag. So here we go. All right, let's come back up here. Look at actions again. There we go.
Yes, so
and
as you can see, the first time is a bit of work.
So it usually does not do that. Just kind of an issue updating. So it actually says it ran through all the steps. The UI just wasn't updating for me. So let's just make sure that really happened. So it says that it did push Tomcat v1.1. So let's go see if that's the case. So we'll click on containers and we'll hit edit. And we'll edit this guy. And instead of that date tag, there we go. We'll pick version 1.1. Notice how useful this is, by the way. So you can always roll back to prior versions. You basically have a image with everything you need inside of it, including your Servoy war file, to make that easy for you to roll forwards and backwards. All right. So we'll save that and create. Should see this die off fairly soon because this is going to kill our current one. Successfully deployed. Let's go look at the uptime. So one thing to keep in mind is the deployment is really the deployment of Tomcat. So the deployment of your war file inside of Tomcat will take a little bit longer. If you want to watch what's going on, we should be able to come down. Usually they got a way to watch the log. So there we go. So it looks like it should be up. All right, there we go. So it's been up for 44 seconds. Our page has expired here, of course. So we'll refresh it. And there's our update with it changed to user. All right, there you go. All right, so there are other things, of course, you would want to do, custom domain names, things like that, making sure you got your RAM and CPU set up correctly. But this is just your basic how-to getting started. And then if you choose to use Azure, you're going to want to invest some time in learning about managing Microsoft's Azure cloud, so you can make sure you get it configured correctly. But of course, if you need help, we're always available. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Scott. Yeah, so as you can see, the first time it's quite a hassle compared to Servoy Cloud, where you just do commit and it does all of its magic. So if you prefer the black box that Servoy Cloud is, then that's the way to go. But if you want to deploy to your own server, to an Azure server, to any other cloud, then this is a way to make things easier, especially after the first time, because the first time, as you can see, you have to go through the whole config. But we put this in on purpose because this is what you'll have to go through if you go to Azure or if you go to something else. All right, who wants to know about pricing? Nobody?
Yeah.
All right. Good news is I negotiated for you guys. I said you need to give the people at ServoyCamp some discount because they came all the way here to spend a lot of money. You're not here, so you're getting some discount, 25% off. So you can either license just this, which is $650, or you can get the whole shebang that iTech Pros does, which are all his plugins and components and Does anybody have a license on them? 1, 2, 3. The Word plugin is really good. Word plugin is really good. Yeah, so they have a bunch of very good plugins, and you know, if you can get for a single developer $800 per year, you get everything, including this. Or if you with more than one developer, $1,200 for all your developers, you get all the stuff they have. The Word plugin by itself is worth it.
It's really cheap.
And then 20%. I wonder if the 25% off is going to be for the lifetime or for just the first year. Maybe Scott can let us know in the comments. Any thoughts, any questions for Scott? Because he'll watch this video, then post his questions in the Discord channel. All right. Thank you very much. And then over to